Snap, where's my notes? Just hit them. All right. Copy. Bina, just edit this part out because usually I have this running. All right. Done. All right. Resume. Welcome back to another episode here on Hacks and Hobbies. And today I've got an amazing guest with Mickie Kennedy. Now, Mickie Kennedy is the founder of eReleases, a company he started 25 years ago to help those small businesses and creators boost their visibility and credibility through top-tier press release distribution. Mickie, it's so great to have you on the show today. Tell us what inspired you to start e-releases and what were some of the early challenges you faced.
Right. So I was working in a telecom research startup in DC at the time, and I was tasked with figuring out press releases because I had an English background, and I started doing it, and nothing much happened. We were faxing at the time, and my boss was like, "Yeah, that's pretty usual." And so I wasn't satisfied with that. So I started looking at the actual end products, the articles that people write. And an aha moment for me was that, even if it's a small article, journalists like to follow a story arc, the same sort of
Mm,
story arc that we have as children being read stories to, leading up to this climax and then going down and having some resolution. And that formula, what was missing in our press releases was the ingredients for that. And so I started changing what we were writing about, which was mostly data, to writing about the stories behind the data. And then we started getting picked up. And I think the first time I did it, we had published the data for telecom traffic to and from the United States to the Caribbean countries.
mm-hmm.
And one country there comprised more traffic than all the others. And when we explored why, it was because it was the Center for 1-900 numbers at the time, which were really popular in the 1990s or early 1990s. And so I published a press release talking about that, and we got picked up in the Financial Times, The Economist, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and three telecom trade publications. And I just felt like, wow, maybe I figured this out. And I continued to sort of work different angles and test things. But I found the story arc to be the most powerful, and that's what got me hooked in wanting to help small businesses with that.
I love that you shared uh, about the story arcs and the power of stories. I mean, I'm a huge uh, proponent. I'm a huge nerd around storytelling because stories is what brings power. It's what brings connection to other people. Like my kids and I, we're huge story readers, and we read novels. We consume a ton of content every single day, and it's those stories that keep us hooked into. Oh my God, what happened next? Oh my God, what happened next? Oh my God, here's a twist coming, and all of those things that really keep the engagement really tight and really exploratory, because human mind, we are a curious bunch. We love to get curious. We love to understand what's actually happening. So I love that you put in that story arc, the element into e-releases or into press releases.
Yeah, I found that even if you look at Shark Tank, one of the first things they do when they come out there is tell you their personal story,
Mm-hmm.
why they started the business or that product or service, and it's often sharing a vulnerability, like maybe they were laid off or they lost a loved one, and they had this hobby, and they thought maybe I could turn this into a business now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason they do that is because it really injects that, humanity, that human interest element, and you really have this empathy for this person sitting on the stage and being all exposed and vulnerable, and it allows us to care. And I think that that is the, the one thing that is lacking from a lot of press releases is, getting your story out there and really telling whatever it is you're announcing in sort of a story format.
That's really powerful. And there's been one specific press release or one specific company that I've been following in press releases, and that was a company that I had backed through Start Engine a few years ago called Atlas Motor Company. And their goal was to create a system around where you can have an electric car, the electric battery system. They changed the name after 3 years of forming the company to New NXU, and it was pronounced New. And then I just heard recently that they merged with another company, and they're going to yet again change their stock symbol. And they've been posting press releases, but again, they didn't have a storyline into that, which would inspire people to believe in that company, believe in what they were actually building, and believe into where they're coming from. So that's a really great point, to have those stories so that people connect with you on an even deeper level.
Yeah.
Now, Mickey, could you also help me break down for our listeners why press releases are still relevant in today's digital world? Because for the life of me, I've never used a press release for any of my podcasts, any of my stuff that I've been doing. But I have worked with companies, at companies that would release these press releases to inform the world, hey, this is what we're working on. So tell me, how is it relevant in today's world still for people doing
Right.
digital
So
work?
the media is still looking for stories. They're looking to write articles, and press releases are one of the most effective way to reach the media.
Mm,
In the United States, there's basically a duopoly of press release news wires, this Business Wire and PR Newswire. PR Newswire being the oldest and largest newswire of press releases, and all of our press releases at e-releases go out nationally through PR Newswire.
nice.
They charge $1,600 to move a 600 word press release nationally. Through us, that same distribution is substantially cheaper,
Mm,
um, mostly because we work on behalf of small businesses that couldn't
yeah,
afford $1,600 every time.
yeah,
And we also move over 10,000 releases a year. So we're able to negotiate a really steep discount that we pass along to our clients.
nice.
But that being said, busy journalists looking for story ideas go to the Newswire. And the great thing about the Newswire, whether it's Business Wire or Pure Newswire, and we know that they go to both because they have to cover the entire industry,
Mm-hmm.
and they're sort of fragmented in two places. Uh, they are able to see a customized feed when they log in, and it's their industry, and they can actually make it very specific to them. So if there's something within their industry that they want to exclude, like certain keywords, they can do that.
Yeah.
And so it makes it just very clean and very useful for them. Uh, this is completely different from their inbox, which has really exploded with off-targeted pitches and press releases because of um, the introduction of media databases that people can license for
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these people say, "Hey, we spent the money for this, and there's no penalty for sending to people who." Probably aren't interested in our product. Let's just go
Yeah.
ahead and send it to everybody. And so that's created a real terrible system for
Mm,
email, and it's made the reliance on the newswire even more important.
wow.
The downside with a duopoly is the cost. It is traditionally very expensive, but with us, it's extremely affordable to reach the newswire, and the real value of it is the leverage. You're reaching so many places at once.
Yeah.
We have a case study on our website, ereleases.com. It's our first one there, and it's about the Dining Bond Initiative, which was set up for a very short-lived period to
Mm-hmm.
help restaurants that were closed during the pandemic. And just by
Oh,
hitting send with a press release, it generated over 100 articles. All the big publications picked it up. A lot of food trade publications picked it up, and just dozens and dozens and dozens of daily newspapers across the U.S.
wow.
And the reason it did so well, I think, is because it was positive news at a time where There was a lot of uncertainty. We had been sent home for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And also, there was, it's actionable. Basically, you nominated your favorite local restaurant, and if the volunteers were able to get a hold of them, you
Yeah,
would give money that went directly to them, and it would be backed sort of what by a dining bond or gift certificate scenario. And if you had a favorite restaurant you would go to on your anniversary, and you wanted to make sure that you were able to help them in some small part, it was a very actionable thing that you could do, and it empowered people and generated over $10 million in revenue,
that's
helping small
amazing.
businesses, all by just hitting send, with the newswire. And that's the real value of it. It's just the wide availability, and if you have the right message and you're newsworthy enough, you can get a really wide pickup.
Holy smokes, that's mind blowing. And the one thing that's coming up for me is that it's the distribution, right? Distribution to the right people at the right time. I spoke with somebody recently at a podcast movement, and she was saying that when she used to be at Fox News covering the news and whatnot, she would get 2.1, 3.5 million views to her stories, whereas she's not getting the same kind of views on social media or her YouTube channel. And that's the entire point of a news network. They have the distribution, and they can charge, and they can, pay for that distribution from the ad revenue and everything. Whereas it's very limited when you have your own, when you're trying to do your own thing. And another thing that came up for me was how I was going to ask you about Quoted and HR, Haro. Like, these are the different services that reporters or are, asking questions. Hey, I'm looking for this kind of news. So, is there some kind of relevance between the press releases and what Haro can do? Like, how how does that affect the power of press releases?
Right. So it's a bit different.
Okay.
Harrow is where a journalist posts an opportunity and people reply to it. And it worked really well
Mm-hmm.
maybe 10 years ago, but now
Okay.
now it doesn't. The problem is it's like one opportunity and you've now got 400 or 500 companies competing for it. And used to be
Sure.
you'd have like 20 or 30 people competing for it. So
Mm-hmm.
the odds are really stacked against you.
Okay.
Unless you have something that's just very irresistible, it's going to be hard to rise in, with those kinds of odds.
Yeah.
With the press release, I will admit that probably 97% of press releases that go out there and go over the wire don't generate any earned media.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing that I try to teach people is that there are 3% that do get picked up. There's patterns there. And if you
Yeah.
follow those patterns, you can get picked up. Taking what you would normally write and injecting a story in it can really go a long way. The most popular press release that we get at e-releases is the product launch press release.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually, here's our product, here's a list of features, and here's a page to learn more and buy.
Yeah.
And for a journalist, it's like, that's not much of a story.
Yeah.
And, they have to decide, is this something that's going to entertain or educate or even ideally both for my audience? And,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to rise to the occasion. But the
Yeah.
things that you could put in there would be, telling your story, how you started the company or the product, or even more importantly, put a use case study in there.
Mm-hmm.
Here was a company that was losing 5% a year, and they started using our software solution, and at the end of a 90-day trial they're projected to have a 3% profit by the end of this
Mm-hmm.
year. And that's a huge turnaround in such a short period amount of time.
Yeah.
And then have a quote by them, and so that makes that really, relevant. And you can even take publicly available data and say, yeah, what this company was facing is not unlike 67% of new businesses in our industry that
Right.
fail every 5 years because they just aren't able to reach profitability. And here's a solution that can do that.
I
And
love
that
it.
shows the stakes of why your product or solution is really important. So, just sometimes taking what you would normally want to send and then just incorporating those elements can really make it much more desirable from the media standpoint, and they can then immediately envision a story, an article that they would write.
Dude, that's so powerful, especially having those stories and an embedded data points because ref- people they're attracted to them, or they're attracted to those data points, and they're like, oh my god, okay, if this can happen for them, how would it work for me as well? So it's really great points. And it also shows me how small businesses and startups can make an impact when they use press releases properly, based on your recommendation. Now, what I also hear in your messaging is that you're not only helping them devise a story for their product or for their services, for or whatever it is that they want to talk about, but you're also helping them guide, hey, make sure you have these things in place on your website, because that's where you're driving all of the traffic to. So make sure you have all those things in place, because this press release is going to affect the traffic on your server. So if you don't have a good hosting, make sure you have good hosting set up in place as well. Now let's talk about the an effective, some of the key elements of an effective press release. What are some of these core components? You did mention to bringing the story arc into the press release, so there's more substantial weight to the messaging. Are there any specific elements that small businesses tend to overlook when they're trying to create something?
Right. So I think a press release is very simple. It's not advanced writing. It's really just answering the questions, the who, what, when, where, how, and why
Mm-hmm.
of your announcement that you feel is newsworthy.
Yeah.
And because of that, the headline is extremely important. That's what journalists see streaming on the wire, and then deciding to click through and read more. Also having an amazing quote in a press release can really save you. If a journalist is looking at two story ideas, two press releases, and he feels like I can probably write a pretty good press release for both of these, they're about the same newsworthiness, but
Yeah.
one has an amazing quote, they know that if they take that quote and put it in the article, that article is going to shine even more. And if the other one just has a safe quote, doesn't really say anything
Mm-hmm.
that's, important, they're less likely to use it, and they know it's not going to be, make the article rise.
Yeah.
And so having an amazing quote is extremely important. And by amazing, I mean it could be how you say it. We all see, like, powerful speaking where people use wonderful metaphors and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But if that's not your thing, just saying something that's paraphrased and strong
Yeah.
and active verbs can really, make that quote shine and stand out. And so you want it that if the journalist was to remove the quote, there would be an ache or a loss of what you had written, that
Yeah.
quote really is the highlight and it shines. And unfortunately, most quotes seem like they've been written by a, committee within a company or a business, and they're just safe. No one's going to be fired for it,
Yeah.
but also no one's going to be inspired by it. No one's going to look at that quote and go, wow, that's an amazing quote. So really spend a lot of time there. Another thing you're allowed to do is include two images. And,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think your logo is that important. I don't see a lot of people putting logos in articles, but, I do see, especially online, a lot of people using photos. So,
Mm-hmm.
use a photo. And the best kind are not stock photos, and they're not the ultra corporate, high end, wonderful, well lit, thing. It's often a quote that, I mean, a picture that, someone took on an iPhone, and
Sure.
it's usually a candid shot, and it may be of, a customer, and it's a little messy in the background, and people are okay with that.
Yeah.
People engage online more with these candid shots than these old professional stock photos that they were used to. And so that's been the biggest change I've seen over the last 10 years, is that the media actually wants more candid shots, or shots that are curious and will get their online audience really interested and engaged. And so if you have an image or two like that when
Yeah.
you send out your press release, they're going to, again, more likely go to you if they're comparing two press releases of simple, similar newsworthiness. And so that's another great thing to really do. And I think a lot of people don't, some people don't even include an image at all when they upload it. So,
Yeah.
make sure you include something there. It's a great opportunity. It's another leverage point that you can use for really getting that press release maximized, and more people considering it. And I think that, lastly, actually, one of the things that I think that people forget about is that these press releases are for everybody, and journalists do not get appreciated for covering large companies. They
Yeah.
have to cover the Googles and the Microsofts of the world, but they get more shares and more accolades, appreciation from their audience when they cover a business or a tool or service that no one knows about.
Mm.
And it gives the journalist the perception that they're curators and they've discovered this new uh, business in your industry,
Yeah.
and they've invented this really great service, this really great tool that you can use. And people appreciate that. And the shares on those articles are much more higher
Hmm.
than the engagement on articles that are written about the Apples and Microsofts. So don't think that being small is a disadvantage with the media. It's actually a huge
I
advantage
love
because
that.
they are going to more likely want to cover someone that no one knows than someone that pretty much everybody in the industry is aware of. And so you really want to make sure that you take advantage of that and let journalists put the spotlight on you because they love doing it. They love getting
Mm.
the appreciation from their audience when they've found something that no one knows about. And I've read lots of blog posts from people in the technology world that will spotlight a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and all of a
Mm.
sudden this is on my radar, and I'm next thing I know I'm backing them. And I've
Yeah.
read their story about how they just wanted a change to something that was already out there, and that business was unwilling to do it, so they've decided that they're going to pull up their sleeves and do it themselves, and they're coming along for the ride and sharing all of the little adventures along the way,
Yeah.
like getting a form made and a factory and all these other certain parameters and things you have to think about. And people love that. People
Yeah.
love the journey. People love, going along with you, and they get invested. And, even products that I probably don't want or really need. It's really, I'm just like, hey, here's $40 to help this person get to their goal because I
Yeah.
care about them, right? I
Yeah.
cared about their story. And that's really powerful. And that's the things that journalists love to do. So don't feel, that you're too small to matter. Journalists don't mind covering small businesses. They don't mind covering basically, side hustles. You have a full-time
Sure.
job, but you've started something else online that you're doing. So, go ahead and go out there and claim a little bit of that exposure and that little bit of attention. And, you might be pleasantly surprised
I
that the
love it.
media is willing to engage with you.
You shared so much, Mickey. I'm kind of blown away. It's answering a lot of the questions that I've had in my mind, like how do I get in front of more and more people, and reporters and journalists are some of the uh, top, well researched people in the world that are gonna get your message in front of the world like no other, which is kind of mind blowing, because you can write all the blogs and all the content on your website, which is really great for SEO in the long term. But for a short term boost, I think these press releases are really going to bring in a ton of traffic to all the services and the products that you're working on and building. Now, you've all also shared some of the common mistakes that people are making when they're doing these press releases. For example, not including photos, not including a good quote, and making sure that the quote is very well, it's well meaning, and it's from the heart. That's when it really hits. When I think a ton of people mentioned this quote of Maya Angelou. It's not what you said, it's the feeling that you incited. I'm kind of like paraphrasing what she said, but it's a feeling that you get from listening to people that are gonna really keep you connected. Give me some examples of some really good quotes that's captured your attention in the past years that you've been working in this space.
I think for me, some of the best quotes are the ones that I think a lot of people are familiar with, like the stepping on the moon, one small step for man, but when,
Yes.
big step. I mean, they're the ones that inspire. And I
Hmm.
think that, those things that capture the moment so perfectly and really catapult you from looking at from the individual
Yeah.
to looking at society as a whole. And so I think that those can be some of the most inspiring ones and are really wonderful. And I also recognize that that seems like an impossible ask for people to do. So I always tell people just, take what you want to say and try to make it as concrete as possible. Like try to
Yeah.
use as much detail and specificity. If you're talking about how you help people, are there numbers attached to it? Like,
Yeah.
hey, people who've gone through our pilot beta test program saw a certain number or something like that. Try to incorporate a data point. But more importantly, just, use active verbs, make it
Mm.
strong, make it as condensed as possible. Like there's no word in there that's not doing some work. And I think that if you can, do that, then you'll walk away with a quote that'll really help the press release. It may not inspire a nation or anything like that, but I think that it can really rise and be a benefit to you getting some particular media pickup and consideration.
Nice. Now, I'm absolutely sold on, using press releases for my business because I haven't used any of that. I've barely ran any ads, and is how does this compare to running ads versus doing a press release, and how does that secure media attention to not only help establish business credibility?
Right. So I guess when it comes to advertising, this is a completely different beast. You don't control it like you do with paid advertising. With
Mm-hmm.
paid advertising, you send everybody to a landing page. You can put a page in there about a product and hope that that's where they send you to, but they
Yeah.
might just as easily send you to the home page of the person, or in some cases, no website at all. Like the
Mm-hmm.
New York Times rarely ever links to anybody.
Yeah.
But that being said, when my clients get an article in the New York Times, their phone rings and they get a lot of web traffic, and they know it came from that article that people went and did a search for you. And
Mm.
so you want to make sure that, when you do get media pickup, that you are easily found through searches, people looking for your company name. Maybe if it's hard when people type in the words to find you, maybe you advertise on the word that people would use to find you, like your company name.
Mm.
Seems, maybe counterintuitive, but it's a great way to stand out
Yeah.
and be at the top of the search results. Other things just to sort of keep in mind is that you can incorporate elements that make people care, but you can also incorporate elements that make people emotional. And,
Yeah.
sometimes being a contrarian is a great way to stand out.
Mm.
And that's like if everybody in your industry is saying the same thing. It used to be that people would promote a concept called newsjacking,
Yeah.
and it would be like you would join the conversation and you would have a press release with some quotes where you talk about this topic that everybody is talking about in your industry because it's very popular. Well, it's just like Harrow. There's so many people doing that. It,
Mm.
it doesn't stand out, and your chances of pickup are terrible. During the Target credit card breach, gosh, it's been so many years ago.
Yeah.
Everybody in security did a press release about it, and they just basically said what everybody else said. It was just
Yeah.
safe, and they were contributing to it. And sure, there was probably about 60 or 70 articles that got published. So 60 or 70 companies probably did get some pickup and
Mm-hmm.
some exposure, but there was over 1,500 people competing. So the
Wow.
odds weren't very good for you. So the thing I would say is, everybody in the industry is saying this. Is there something that you could say that's different? I didn't actually do a complete contrarian viewpoint with one client, but I
Sure.
told them everybody's focusing on this. What could you say for your core audience that's different? And they said, well, most of our customers aren't big companies like Target, and we don't do the Fortune 500 type companies. We mostly do mom and pops, and it's
Yeah.
like the local laundromat or the pizza business around you that might be a chain of like five pizza places in your
Mm-hmm.
state only. And so I said, let's talk about credit card security for these people.
Yeah.
And when we did that and sent it out, they got 4 or 5 articles written about them. And
That's
I
amazing.
guarantee that everybody else who did the newsjacking, even those that got picked up, at most they got one article.
Wow.
And so, here was a way to sort of layer it and make it really relevant for a particular niche. And I think that that was really smart of them. But, things that you could do that are more contrarian are, if everybody, let's say you're in the automotive industry and everybody's like, pro electric cars. Maybe you say something that's like, "Hey, I don't think electric cars are the way we should go right now.
Yeah.
We haven't figured out how to get these minerals out of the land without causing environmental hazards as well as labor issues with children working in these mines.
I know, right?
We
Yeah,
haven't
it's
solved
crazy.
what we're going to do with these batteries at the end of their life, and are we creating a new biohazard for the future generation by doing this? And I don't know about you, but I can't say a car crash that results in a fire that takes 40,000 gallons of water to put out
Mm-hmm.
is environmentally friendly. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
maybe we should address these issues and solve them before we start mandating and embracing electric cars so
Yeah.
fully. And that's a way to be rational about it, but you're really showing a contrarian side. And here's the real value of it: journalists like to be fair and balanced.
Mm-hmm.
It may not seem like it with politics, but the goal is to be fair and balanced. And so if you've got someone out there that's just always, so many people cheerleading the positive, and you're the only person who's raised your hand and said, "Hey, here's the contrarian viewpoint," you stand the opportunity of being in every article that talks about this subject by saying, "Well, here's a person who disagrees." And if you're the only person raising your hand and disagreeing,
Mm-hmm.
you stand the likelihood that anybody that is fair and balanced will incorporate you into their articles that discuss that. And that's a very powerful thing. And,
Yeah.
I do caution my clients that anytime you take these positions, to make sure that position is not going to alienate you with your existing customer base, and that you come across as being rational and not, crazy, like the crazy uncle or something like that. Because sometimes yeah, a contrarian viewpoint can come across as being a bit outside mainstream, and
Yeah.
so you do want to try to be as rational and logical as possible.
No, that's a really good point, Mickey. Thank you so much for sharing the depth of knowledge that you had with helping your clients achieve, what you call is a real news or a real break in the story or a real capture for, especially for journalists looking for um, quality material, quality storytelling out there. So thank you so much for sharing. Lots of amazing things for sure. Now, Mickey, you've been at this for 25 years. What keeps you passionate about helping small businesses with PR?
I think for me, it's the opportunities that are out there and knowing that you can still make this work for
Mm,
small businesses. I see it happening every day.
yeah,
As a matter of fact, I put together a whole master class of basically a 1 hour video where I go through the types of press releases that are getting picked up, the 3% of press releases that do generate earned media. And I try to instruct my customers as well as anybody else who's interested
yeah.
that there are types of releases that do get picked up. And I include one type of press release that always gets picked up,
Mm,
never fails, always generates earned media. And on average, it's usually between 8 and 14 articles.
wow.
And that, for anybody who's interested, the class is at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN, completely free. And
Nice.
it'll give you a deep dive into the types of releases that you should be doing and should be considering.
That's really powerful. Thank you so much for that gift, Mickey, and thank you for putting that together. I'll definitely be checking that out because I want to use press releases for my business, for my podcast, for all of the things that I've been doing and the conversation that I've been having and the results that I've seen with my clients as well. One question that I love to ask, especially because number one, as entrepreneurs, we are working from home. We are spending a lot of time behind the screen and in front of a camera. If you were given a chance to improve your studio or workspace to boost your productivity and connect with your audiences better, what are some of the things that you would change and why?
I think for me, I have really bad ADHD, so I have lots of piles in my life. And I do feel like sometimes I wish I had more opportunities for organizing, like lots of
Mm-hmm.
filing cabinets and
Mm-hmm.
infinite warehouse space that I can label stuff and store it away,
Sure,
even if it is in little piles and
sure.
things like that.
No, I like that because I'm in the same kind of boat. I've got piles of paper here. I've got books here that I'm reading, that I'm publishing, showcasing on the podcast, and it's sometimes I kind of lose track of which project I'm working on and which project I should be focusing on. So, really great point on having a filing system or a cabinet to store those things so that you can get back to it on time. Now, our next segment is around implementable hacks, and you did talk a lot of implementable things that people can introduce and use when they're creating press releases, when they are putting stories together. Uh, I would love if you could share three practical hacks for someone who's just starting with press releases and to get the best results.
Right. I think the first hack is if you already have an announcement that you're doing and you put together, look at it and say, what could I do to reverse engineer this so that a journalist would be more likely to use it? Think about the story arc. What are the things missing from this that would make a great story?
Mm-hmm.
Is it someone using and engaging or interacting with a product or service? Is it, your story of why you started a business or created a new product or a service?
Yeah.
Is it, just something else that could really make the audience want to care about you or make it more likely they'd want to know more about this. And sometimes, like I mentioned, it's just taking data that's already out there and incorporating in there. I've seen people who are really good at taking several data points from several different sources
Mm-hmm.
and incorporate it in a press release and do very well. And it's not their data. And so, but yet they were able to incorporate it in a way that told a story and also their context within that. And that's a great way to get picked up. So, think about, this whole idea of reverse engineering what you've already come to, because unfortunately, most of the people that find e-releases for the first time are just looking to send a release out that they've already written.
Sure.
And so I think that, at that point, telling them to scrap that and write something else is out the window. But what we
Yeah.
could do is tell them, hey, we can go back to this release and see if there's things that are missing or things that we can add that will really elevate it and make it more likely for them to get picked up.
No.
That's definitely one thing. The second thing I think is, don't underestimate, uh, your story and any story. It's like, what is your origin story? When .com era came out, there were so many articles that were talking about eBay, and it was about the founder, programming a website for, I think, his fiance or girlfriend to help her sell her Pez dispensers. She had a collection of Pez dispensers. It turned out it was made up. It didn't exist, but
Okay.
the story did really well. The
Yeah.
story got picked up in over 100 articles. And it was something that immediately took a concept of online auctions, which at the time people didn't really understand how it worked or
Yeah.
much about it. And
Yeah.
it made it very concrete. It's like, oh, you have a little collection, you want to sell it. This just helps you. And it's like, oh, okay, that's very easy. And it
Mm-hmm.
also gets you thinking of like, oh, this is a little site that was created by somebody to help his, girlfriend or significant other, and it brought a little joy. And so, is there things that you could do about your origin story
Yeah.
for either your company or a service or product that brings a little bit of a joy? And sometimes you can't lead with that, but what you can do is usually towards the end of most press releases, we have what we call the boilerplate,
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually about and the company name. So that if it was Microsoft, it usually says at the end about Microsoft, and it's usually a small paragraph that just says what Microsoft is.
Sure.
It's their elevator pitch. And so that's a place where you could put a little bit about your story. So maybe you
Mm-hmm.
don't lead with it but maybe you can incorporate it into your elevator pitch at the bottom of every release. And that's a great way for a journalist skimming your release and saying, maybe there's a story here. Then they read that and it tugs at them and makes them care a little bit because
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're seeing you in more of a um, uh, more as a human
More as a
and
human.
more of
Yeah.
that human
Yeah.
interest element. And I think that can really go a long way. I mean, that's what, pushed eBay to the front pages and covers of like Red Herring and Wired and all those, a couple of decades
Ah,
ago and did really
nice.
well. So don't discount that. And the third thing, the third implementable hack I think you can do is I had mentioned that there was one press release that always gets picked up, and usually it's between 8 and 14 earned media articles that were
Mm-hmm.
written by journalists, and that is to do an industry survey.
Ah.
Ask questions that are relevant right now within your industry. I like SurveyMonkey. I put 4 questions per page, so you might questions total or 12 or even as many as 16. The great thing is if they stop along the way, you've got the earlier pages responses. So, weight the most important questions first.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to have an audience to send that to. You
Yeah.
take that link and then you're going to go and approach an independent or small trade association in your industry. Stay away from the large ones. These are ones you're going to have to do some searches for because
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows about them, but they're out there. Usually they have 400, 600, maybe 1,200 members. And what you're looking for is a membership that you could get some results and be statistically relevant. And generally, the ideal amount is 100 responses is what we're looking
Sure.
for. And you take that link and you approach them and say, "Hey, could I did the survey um, within our for our industry. Here are the questions. Here's a link. Could you send this to your members in exchange for me mentioning you in a press release I'll be issuing in the coming weeks over PR Newswire?" And again, they know PR Newswire is $1,600. They know they don't get a lot of media attention. This could be an opportunity for them to get some media pickup as well. And
Yeah.
so about 2/3 of the ones that we approach initially say yes. They may come back and say, "Hey, could we co-brand the survey?" And I don't see a downside to that, but it might take a little back and forth. But avoid
Sure.
the large ones because they won't work with you. They have their own PR departments. They control everything. They don't need you. But
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
associations exist. I had one person put me on the spot and tell me that in the public relations arena, Mickey, that's the one big exception because there's no other trade associations but Public Relations Society of America. And I had to break it to her that
Mm-hmm.
there's over 470 other PR firm trade associations in the United States alone.
Wow.
And a lot of them
That's
are
amazing.
very ultra specific and will not apply, like, Florida only, or people who graduated from a particular university. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also ones that will apply, like,
Yeah.
uh, shops that have 50 or less employees, which probably account for 80% of the industry,
That's amazing.
and other ones. So find one that sort of aligns with your audience, your customer base, and reach out to them. And don't discount that when they finish that survey, you have the opportunity in SurveyMonkey to send them somewhere. Send them to a page on your website where you introduce
Exactly.
yourself to these other people in your industry
Yeah.
and maybe have them sign up or follow you on LinkedIn, put some links there. That's an opportunity for you to network like crazy and get
Yeah.
some really great approaches. And the thing about these trade associations I love is because they're small, they're mostly made up of people who really care and love that trade association. So when they send a link to go complete a survey to help out, they often will do it. And so that's a
Mm-hmm.
really great alignment. And
Nice.
when you write the press release, you're going to focus on basically one or two of the questions, the ones that would surprise your industry most. You're going to build out a page on your website with all the questions and answers
Sure.
so that you can link to it. But focus the press release on one specific topic and then put an amazing quote of why you felt the numbers skewed a particular way. And it's
Yeah.
a great way for you to stand out and you get elevated by being the author of the survey and a mention for your company. So it's really amazing. And it always generates media pickup. And it's a
Nice.
really great way to stand out in your industry and start getting some major exposure.
I love that, dude. That's a really powerful one, especially those surveys, because you're putting a lot of your own time in researching and finding the right people and putting those questions together. And as somebody who's coming from user experience design and somebody who's coming from marketing, surveying is the number one way to get the temperature of what the audience is looking for, what the people are looking for, and people want to know. I mean, a company that I follow recently put out a survey. They're like, hey, they recently put out a report on a survey they did. Like, this is the state of podcasting for businesses. This is how many more people are doing video podcasts compared to last year. So there's a lot of numbers in there, and I can't wait to share it with my community as well because it's so powerful and people need to be thinking about that. All right, Mickey, we are at our last segment of the show, the fun 6 questions. So you ready for this? It's going to be short, quick questions.
Yep.
All right, let's go. Number 1, what's the one hobby that you wish you got into?
Woodworking. I think I'd like to work with my hands more.
I love woodworking. When I was beekeeping, I'd spent so much time in the workshop building these beehives and setting up the bases for them. It was a lot of fun. I built a lot of things using woodworking. It's been so much when I watch these TikTok videos where people are like, you see the whole progress of them building something and like, wow, this is fascinating. All right, next up, what did you want to be when you were a child?
I wanted to be a writer. I was probably thinking more of a novelist, but I've sort of moved in more into poetry in my personal
Nice.
life.
That's so cool. I remember writing poetry when I was younger and in my native tongue in Urdu, and I can't seem to find any of the stuff that I wrote like years and years ago. But poetry is really powerful because you're capturing an emotion in just a few lines, and people can, they can feel that emotion when they read it too. All right, next up, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Favorite movie? Hmm. I guess I'll go with TV show, and it's going to be Doctor Who. I grew up watching Doctor Who as a kid. Then people came and knocked on our doors and gave us a round antenna and said you could now get PBS from Raleigh, and on that there was a lot of British shows, and Doctor Who
Yeah.
was on it, and I got exposed to it, and I sort of got hooked ever since. I just love what I call bad or cringe sci-fi, where you see them bump into the wall and it sort of moves like cardboard, but you still love the story.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love Doctor Who as well. I've recently watched the latest season, and I was like, wow, it's come a long way, and I love how they brought Matt Smith back just for a little bit, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I missed that guy. It's really fun.
Yeah, there's no more cardboard walls, fortunately.
Yes, no more cardboard walls. Next up, what movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Good movie. I don't know. I remember when I was real little, I think I was in college at the time. Risky Business was doing really well, and
Oh
I really
yeah,
got captivated by Tom Cruise and that little story arc and his non-traditional business venture while his parents were away. And that was a lot of fun. So maybe something like that, something that doesn't take itself too seriously and it's
all
kind of
right.
fun.
I like that. I like that. I'll take that. Risky Business is a fun one for sure. And Tom Cruise, I mean, who can go wrong with Tom Cruise in any playing his role in any movie
Mhm.
is a pretty awesome idea for sure, especially with all the new stuff that he's continually coming on. All right, next up we have who is your favorite superhero?
I'm gonna go with Superman. I always loved Superman when I was a kid in the comics and stuff like that. And I would say that, as far as powers, he had some of the best powers and
Yeah,
flying and all that great stuff. So I would stick with him.
I love it. I love it. All right, man. Next question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Hmm. I would say probably Monopoly. I think that my entrepreneurial and business acumen and as well as investing and stuff like that makes me mindful and thinking of Monopoly.
Nice. I like that. I've gotten that answer from a lot of the people. Monopoly is a very powerful game, and a lot of
I think
people
it's where a
see.
lot of entrepreneurs get started,
That's
growing up and
right.
really seeing how business works and how real estate works and how owning things and, not just spending investing
Yeah,
I think it calls to a lot of entrepreneurs.
it absolutely does, man. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I can't wait to work with you in the future because I see a lot of opportunity for us to work together, especially because I work with a lot of small businesses and you help a lot of small business owners and startups to make that mark in this space because we all need the kind of light shine. Like I'm actually working on a couple of Kickstarter campaigns coming up in the future, so I think this would be a really great way to work together to not only introduce the world with what we are working on, but the movement that we are also looking to create around that. And
Excellent.
your insights into press releases, super invaluable. I can't wait to implement some of those, especially for small businesses and startups looking to make that mark. Now, before we sign off, could you share where our listeners can find more about
Sure.
e-releases and how they can connect with you?
Right. So our website is at irreleases.com. There's social media on the lower right, including my LinkedIn. But
Perfect.
feel free to chat, call, or email our staff. It's only editors, no salespeople. So you're going to be working with people who can assist you and walk you through the process. And again, that free masterclass is a great place for anybody to start. And that's at irreleases.com/plan, PLAN, and it's less than an hour long video because the last time I bought a course and logged in and saw it was 50 hours of videos.
Oh,
I
snap.
tapped out. I said, I
Like,
can't do
no
this.
thanks.
It's too
No thanks.
much. Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Mickey. I'll be sure to include all of those links in the show notes so that people can get in front of you, they can connect with you, and they can find how to, build that, um, build that, build their own PR status in the world. Thank you again so much, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for coming.
very welcome.
All right, guys, and for everyone listening, I'd love to invite you to connect with us for more insights, opportunities, and networking. I believe there's a lot we can achieve together. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and hacking away at your hobbies and passions. And we'll catch you in the next episode. Make sure to check out Mickey's links in the show notes. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment below. If you're listening to this on Spotify, there's a way to comment on each of these episodes. If you're watching this on YouTube, again, leave a comment and we can always be reached in the future uh, in a way that's more coincide with you. All right, thanks so much, guys, and we'll catch you in the next episode.